Hello everyone, I'm Kimberly and this is my historical context video. For my topic, I decided to research on how interracial marriage was viewed in late 18th to early 19th century in England, and I was actually very surprised with what I found. I always thought that the idea of interracial marriage was simply frowned upon, especially in England due to Orientalism and just racism in general. And before diving into my research, I concluded that interracial marriage was frowned upon just based on other literature that I had read in the past, in which the African character was not allowed to marry or be with the English character, and if they did, it would result in some sort of heartbreaking moment because they loved each other. This conclusion or misconception was furthered because of this quote that I read in The Woman of Color on page 55. Quote, "He loved Marcia with fervor, but the pride of the man, the quick feeling of the European, the prejudices which he had imbibed in common with his countrymen, forbade his making this affectionate and heroic girl his wife." Unquote. Before my research, I thought, of course, Mr. Fairfield couldn't marry Marcia because it would be frowned upon. Based on my previous conclusion, I thought that for my topic, I was going to do some research on this and then back it up and find some examples or some data on why interracial marriage was frowned upon. However, what I actually found is that in reality, interracial marriage was seen as a calculated way to assimilate people of color, especially free African people in the 18th and 19th century. Those who were not enslaved were still prone to oppression, of course. Even though interracial marriage was seen as a available assimilation, it was still frowned upon for white Americans and white British people to marry people of color, just because of colorism and blatant racism. I found that interracial marriage was specifically used to assimilate African people. I found this in the article Intermarriage in Late 18th Century British Literature, Currents in Assimilation and Exclusion by Susan Iwanisziw. I could totally be pronouncing that wrong, so I apologize. Iwanisziw states, quote, "Law and social mores with respect to intermarriage imposed limits on both its occurrence and acceptability. Where laws permitted interracial marriage, prevailing sexual codes, the social class of the participants and the tone of public accounts of intermarriage were of paramount significance in determining levels of toleration." Unquote. This is in page 57. Based on this, I'm wondering if your social status was higher, or maybe if you were wealthier, would it not be as bad to marry interracially because that would mean that you're successfully assimilating? To me, this gave a whole new meaning to the condition of the inheritance given by the father in the story to his illegitimate daughter. Maybe he's asking his illegitimate daughter to basically assimilate herself in order to keep the English social status acceptable and good, granted that his money would go to her. Of course, this assimilation via intermarriage was still frowned upon at the time, not because of assimilation, but because of the darkening of the skin of future generations. Iwanisziw states this in quote, "Assimilation was dependent upon the opportunity for intermarriage, but toward the close of the century, this expedient began to lose its hold on the British imagination. Gretchen Hallberg-Gerzina, observing the prevalence of intermarriage where Blacks were numerous, also notes several instances for public commentary regarding the supposed darkening of this British complexion." Unquote. This is on page 64. So to me, this whole idea of marrying interracially to assimilate, it kind of brought a whole new perspective on the condition of marrying someone in England in order to get the inheritance as a condition. Not just because that way the bloodline would stay mostly white, but also because that way this father figure could be assimilating African people. African people could be easily assimilated, and the cycle of wealth would continue because of the social status that the couple would have after receiving this inheritance. So I thought that was super interesting, just basically interracial marriage being used as a tool to assimilate African people. Racism, oh man. Okay, well, I hope you guys have a good day and see you in class.